Tonight, let me take you into a world where polished marble corridors and gilded ceilings conceal more than mere wealth. Imagine for a moment that within the palaces of Europe, behind walls adorned with tapestries and beneath floors walked upon by kings and queens, there existed spaces that few ever dared whisper about. Rooms unseen, chambers hidden, sanctuaries where secrets festered and destinies were decided. These were not only architectural marvels, they were the breathing lungs of power itself. Welcome, dear listener, to History 1. If this intrigues you, do subscribe to our channel, for many more journeys into forgotten truths await. Now, let us unlock the first door to this tale. The existence of secret chambers within Europe's royal palaces was not mere rumor. They were real, concealed with such cunning that even the servants who polished the marble steps and tended to the tapestries could pass them daily without ever suspecting. These rooms were not part of the official blueprints. No architect dared speak of them aloud. Yet, behind sliding panels, hidden staircases, and false walls, the rulers of Europe cultivated spaces that belonged only to them. Take, for instance, the French court during the reign of Louis XIV. Versailles, with its blinding gold and gardens of impossible perfection, projected grandeur unmatched in Europe. Yet, behind its theatrical facade, lay corridors so narrow one had to press sideways to pass, leading into closets that blossomed into entire rooms. These chambers served purposes never to be announced at court banquets. Some were escape routes, built in the aftermath of assassination attempts on earlier monarchs. Others were love nests, where whispered liaisons with courtesans or ladies-in-waiting shaped dynasties more profoundly than any treaty. Louis XIV himself was rumored to have maintained a chamber accessible only through a concealed panel in the king's apartment. From there, he could move unseen across the palace, vanishing from his ministers, even from the queen, to conduct private affairs. The courtiers knew to feign ignorance. One never asked how the king appeared suddenly in a room he had not entered, nor how he vanished without the creak of a door. But France was not alone in this. Across the English Channel, in Tudor England, Henry VIII's palaces were said to be riddled with passages and chambers designed not only for pleasure, but survival. Henry trusted few, and for good reason. Political plots brewed like storms in taverns and in courtly whispers alike. At Hampton Court, hidden staircases wound behind the walls, permitting the king to escape to fortified rooms should the need arise. Chroniclers hinted that Anne Boleyn, before her downfall, had discovered one such chamber, a place Henry used to spy upon his own court, listening to conversations that courtiers believed private. Her knowledge of it may have sealed her fate, for Henry could not risk a queen who knew where the king's most sacred secrets were kept. But let us not imagine these chambers as mere pragmatic shelters. They were also theaters of shadows, where confessions were whispered and alliances were forged away from prying eyes. In Vienna, within the labyrinth of the Hofburg Palace, entire apartments were hidden behind false walls. One, legend has it, belonged to Empress Maria Theresa, who used it as a sanctum for prayer and consultation with her most trusted advisors. To the outside world, she was a ruler bound by court ritual, yet within those secret walls, she spoke candidly, far removed from the ears of foreign ambassadors and scheming nobles. And yet, darker purposes also unfolded within these hidden rooms. In Spain's Escorial, chambers concealed beneath the monastery palace complex were believed to serve as torture chambers and archives for the Inquisition. Officially, such tales were dismissed as superstition, yet documents discovered centuries later hint at passages where prisoners vanished, never to return. Perhaps the most chilling example comes from the palaces of Eastern Europe, where royal families often faced sudden uprisings. In Poland and Russia, chambers beneath palaces connected to underground tunnels, allowing monarchs to flee unseen. But these escape routes also doubled as prisons, places where rivals were disappeared, never to trouble the crown again. Dear listener, every chamber tells a story, some of love and betrayal, some of power and fear, and some of horrors unspoken. Tonight, we begin our journey through these secret spaces, brick by brick, whisper by whisper, as though we too are slipping behind the tapestries of time. If you are standing in the grand hall of Versailles, your eyes are blinded by gold and crystal, but your ears would pick up the echo of footsteps that do not match your own. Somewhere, beyond the ornate doors, there exists a silence too deliberate, a hollow beneath the walls that betrays another presence. This is where the truth begins to breathe. For the kings and queens of Europe understood a chilling reality. Power could only be preserved if one mastered the art of invisibility. And invisibility was best achieved in stone, in wood, in hidden chambers. One of the most intriguing legends of Versailles tells of a chamber so well concealed that even the architects tasked with its construction did not know the entirety of their work. Orders were delivered in fragments, designs sketched upon scraps of parchment that were destroyed after being read. Only the king's closest confidants oversaw the joining of these fragments into what became a room of shadows, hidden behind the gallery of mirrors. Courtiers whispered that foreign emissaries disappeared into it, entering under the guise of negotiation, emerging with their will broken, agreeing to terms they had resisted in public. Some claimed they saw men exit pale and trembling, as if the walls themselves had pressed secrets out of them. But the French were not unique in their games of concealment. Across the English Channel, Elizabeth I cultivated her own world of hidden rooms. At Richmond Palace, whispers told of a concealed oratory, a tiny space where the Queen prayed in solitude, away from spies and schemers. Elizabeth understood that her court was riddled with Catholic sympathizers who dreamed of her downfall. The secret chamber became not just a place of prayer, but of strategy. In its hush, she is said to have rehearsed the speeches that later galvanized her people, most famously, the speech before the Armada, when she declared she had the heart and stomach of a king. Few knew those words were first uttered to silent walls, in a chamber meant to protect her from ears that could not be trusted. Hidden chambers often had more than one purpose. Some concealed passion, others paranoia. In Prague Castle, the seat of Bohemian kings, a passage behind the throne room led to what appeared at first to be a simple storage room. Yet beneath its wooden floorboards, archaeologists discovered evidence of gatherings, wax from candles, traces of wine, scraps of parchment burned in haste. The theory? A secret council chamber where plots too dangerous for public halls were hatched. What matters of crown and betrayal might have been whispered there, only to be buried in silence. Not all secret chambers were rooms in the traditional sense. In Scotland, Stirling Castle was built with hidden stairs carved directly into the thickness of the stone walls. Some led to hidden doors opening out into forests or rivers, perfect escape routes in times of siege. But one passage ended abruptly in a windowless cell, no larger than a closet. Local lore held it was used to confine noble prisoners whose disappearance could not be publicly acknowledged. It was neither dungeon nor courtroom, but something far more sinister, a void where inconvenient lives simply ceased. Of course, secrecy was not limited to political necessity. Royal passions demanded it as well. The Medici palaces in Florence were notorious for passages linking bedchambers in ways that bypassed official corridors. A duke could visit his mistress and return to his wife without ever being seen. Lovers' trysts, illicit children, whispered confessions, all were contained within walls that never spoke. Imagine, listener, the layers of scandal concealed by these stone arteries. Whole bloodlines may have shifted because of decisions made in the hush of these spaces. Perhaps the most fascinating example comes from the Vatican. Though not technically royal in the same sense, the papal palaces of Rome housed corridors and chambers known only to popes and their most trusted guards. The Pozzetto di Borgo, a fortified passage linking the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo, was an escape route. Yes. But within the Vatican itself were hidden libraries, rooms locked with keys that no one dared replicate. Inside them rested books, banned by the very church that claimed to condemn them. Popes read by candlelight works of forbidden philosophy, grimoires, and letters from monarchs containing secrets so scandalous they could not risk exposure. Listener, do you feel the weight of this? These chambers were more than stone and mortar. They were repositories of fear, lust, ambition, and survival. They allowed rulers to act as mortals when in public they were forced to be gods. They were the stage wings behind the glittering theater of monarchy. And as we step deeper into this story, you will see that some of the greatest turning points in history may have been decided not in the grandeur of throne rooms, but in the narrow silence of secret chambers. Picture, if you will, the throne room of a great European palace, where chandeliers burn like constellations, where velvet and ermine cloak monarchs in divine authority. Courtiers kneel, diplomats bow, the orchestra swells. Yet even as history appears to unfold beneath those vaulted ceilings, the true heartbeat of power thrums elsewhere. Beyond those gilded doors, behind carved oak panels, and beneath tapestries of hunting scenes, lies the hidden world of chambers known only to the sovereign and their chosen few. Let us journey next into the cold stone walls of England's Windsor Castle. It is said that beneath its mighty fortifications stretched a web of concealed rooms and passages known only to monarchs. In the reign of Charles II, a particularly notorious chamber was constructed, a hidden retreat near St. George's Chapel. Court gossip whispered that Charles used it to conduct secret audiences with informants and to arrange clandestine meetings with women of the court. What fascinated his contemporaries, however, was not the scandal of his loves, but the idea that in this chamber, the king sometimes disguised himself to listen at the very doors of his court. Here was a king who preferred to hear the whispers of his realm firsthand, unfiltered by ministers. How many plots were foiled because a monarch in disguise had already learned of them in a room where no one believed him present? France, too, harbored darker uses for its hidden chambers. In the Bastille, before it became the hated symbol of tyranny, there existed rooms deliberately erased from official plans. Within them, prisoners of particular importance were kept, their names omitted from registers, their crimes known only to the king. These forgotten chambers offered a monarch the power to erase men from the world without trial, without record. Imagine the terror, dear listener, of vanishing into stone, your name never again spoken, your family forbidden to ask. The Bastille was not simply a fortress, it was a labyrinth of silence. In Austria, at Schönbrunn Palace, the summer residence of the Habsburgs, travelers often marveled at its grand yellow facade and endless gardens. Few, however, knew of the hidden theater beneath its walls. According to palace archives, an underground chamber existed where emperors and empresses could watch private performances, plays, operas, even shadowy entertainments forbidden by the censors. Here, away from the public, the rulers of Austria indulged in art too scandalous or politically dangerous to be seen in official halls. Some said that during times of turmoil, even performances mocking foreign monarchs were staged, laughter echoing in the secrecy of candlelit walls. Not all hidden chambers served indulgence. In the harsh winters of Russia, the Kremlin concealed vault-like rooms beneath its cathedrals. During Ivan the Terrible's reign, these were not mere storerooms, but interrogation chambers. It is whispered that Ivan himself would descend into the gloom to question traitors, his eyes burning with suspicion. From these secret rooms, screams rose into the night, yet the surface world heard only the sound of bells from gilded towers. But the most haunting stories come not from the mighty capitals, but from smaller courts, where the line between survival and extinction was thinner. In Bavaria, inside the residence at Munich, a concealed chamber was discovered centuries later. Its walls painted with grotesque figures, its floor stained with wax and wine. Scholars debated its purpose. Some argued it was used for secret rituals. Others believed it to be a retreat for alchemists favored by the dukes. Whatever its truth, the existence of such a room within the palace of devout Catholic rulers spoke of contradictions hidden deep in noble bloodlines. Publicly pious, privately drawn to forbidden knowledge, how many rulers of Europe shared the same duplicity? And then there is the tale of the Whispering Chamber in Copenhagen's Rosenborg Castle. Behind a mirrored wall, a small chamber was designed so that a king could listen to the conversations of courtiers in the adjacent hall. The acoustics were so precise that whispers carried as though spoken directly into the ear. Imagine the paranoia this bred. Courtiers never certain if the king was present or absent, whether a jest or criticism might reach his ears. Fear itself became the mortar of power. Listener, every chamber had its purpose, and every purpose reflected the fragile humanity of monarchs. They were not gods, though dressed as such. They were creatures of flesh, prey to fear, lust, ambition, and the hunger to know what others dared not reveal. The hidden chambers of Europe remind us that history is not only shaped in public proclamations but in silence. Silences carved in stone, silences filled with secrets that even now cling to the dust of forgotten walls. And yet, the deeper we go, the more we realize that these secret spaces may have altered history in ways the world never realized. For inside them, deals were struck, heirs were conceived, and enemies were destroyed. What if the fate of entire nations hinged on a whispered promise made in the dark, in a room that never officially existed? Now, dear listener, imagine this: a dynasty's survival hinging not on armies or alliances, but on the placement of a single hidden door. Such was the truth in Europe, where kings and queens trusted stone more than men. Behind every throne stood a wall, and behind many walls, a secret chamber that could decide the fate of an empire. Take, for instance, the most famous hidden chamber of Scotland, Holyrood Palace, Edinburgh. Beneath its royal apartments lay a room sealed so carefully that only monarchs held its key. Mary, Queen of Scots, is believed to have used it as both sanctuary and council chamber. Chronicles whisper that here she met with her loyal nobles to plot her survival against the rising Protestant lords. One story tells of her kneeling in candlelight, clutching a crucifix, her face pale yet unshaken, as she listened to whispered news of conspiracies against her. That chamber's silence bore witness to decisions that would ripple across Britain, culminating in her imprisonment and tragic end. How many tears and prayers must those stone walls have absorbed, knowing their queen's fate was sealed beyond them? In Italy, hidden chambers took on another form: the passageways of Florence. The Medici, masters of both politics and art, constructed a secret corridor known as the Vasari Corridor, stretching nearly a kilometer above the streets, linking the Palazzo Vecchio with the Pitti Palace. To the public, it appeared as mere architecture. To the Medici, it was lifeblood. In its shadowed interior, dukes and princes moved unseen, escaping assassins or arranging clandestine meetings with allies. Yet beneath its stones, smaller, more intimate chambers were said to exist. Alcoves where portraits of mistresses were hidden, where love letters exchanged in secrecy were kept safe from rival factions. To walk through the corridor was to traverse a hidden artery of Florence's soul, where politics, passion, and survival intertwined. In France again, let us return for a moment to the shadow of Versailles. Few know that the palace housed a chamber used not by kings, but by queens. Marie Antoinette herself possessed a hidden apartment, accessed through disguised doors, where she could retreat from the crushing rituals of court life. In those rooms, she was not a queen bound by etiquette, but a young woman laughing with her closest companions, tasting forbidden fruits, even dabbling in games of chance. Yet the irony is cruel. Those same hidden chambers that once gave her relief could not save her when the revolution came. In 1789, when angry mobs stormed Versailles, she escaped through secret passages to the king's chambers. For a fleeting moment, stone served her well, but ultimately, no chamber was deep enough to protect her from history's tide. Further east, in Poland, the royal castle of Warsaw contained concealed rooms used during the deluge, when Swedish forces swept across the land. These chambers held not monarchs, but treasures: golden reliquaries, sacred relics, and state documents hidden to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. They were not only rooms, but vaults of identity. Without them, Poland's cultural memory might have been looted into oblivion. How many national treasures across Europe owe their survival not to armies, but to these hidden pockets of silence? Even darker stories emerge from the palaces of Spain. The Alcazar of Seville, a fortress palace of Moorish origin, was riddled with secret rooms and tunnels. During the reign of Philip II, whispers circulated about chambers reserved for interrogations and confessions, rooms where nobles accused of heresy were summoned, never to be seen again. Whether myth or truth, these tales reveal the power of belief. People feared the chambers as much as they feared the Inquisition itself. Sometimes rumor alone was as effective as stone walls, and perhaps the most haunting tale belongs to Germany's Heidelberg Castle. Among its ruins lies a legend of a phantom chamber sealed during the 30 Years' War. It was said that the Elector Palatine constructed a hidden vault to store alchemical experiments, powders, elixirs, and manuscripts too dangerous for the world to know. When enemy troops advanced, the chamber was sealed forever, its entrance lost to rubble. Some claim that within it still lies a library of forbidden knowledge, untouched by centuries, waiting for hands bold or foolish enough to open it. Listener, do you feel the thread that binds these stories? Each chamber reflects not only the fears of rulers, but their dreams. They sought safety, love, secrecy, and even eternity within these spaces. And yet, as centuries passed, the chambers themselves became legends, their entrances lost, their purposes half forgotten. But legends, as you know, have a way of whispering back into the world. Even today, in the renovation of old palaces, workers stumble upon bricked passages, false walls, staircases leading nowhere. Each discovery is a reminder. History hides within itself, waiting for someone to listen. Close your eyes, dear listener, and imagine yourself standing in the echoing corridors of an old European palace. The air smells faintly of wax and stone, the hush so deep you can hear the throb of your own pulse. A tapestry rustles faintly as if stirred by a draft, and behind it, a narrow seam betrays something more. A hidden door. Beyond that threshold lies not a grand hall nor a banquet room, but the secret chambers, the true heart of royal power. Let us step now into the Netherlands, into the Binnenhof of The Hague. Known today as the seat of government, in the 17th century, it was a royal residence rife with intrigue. Beneath its medieval foundations stretched narrow passageways where members of the House of Orange conducted private councils. Here, far from the eyes of the States General, William of Orange and his descendants shaped strategies against Spanish rule. Documents smuggled through these chambers carried instructions to loyalists across the Low Countries. To the world above, it appeared that open debates decided the fate of the Dutch Republic. Yet in truth, freedom was carved first in silence, in hidden stone. In France again, whispers cling to the Palais Royal in Paris. Built by Cardinal Richelieu and inherited by Louis XIV, the palace was said to conceal more than opulent theaters. Beneath its marble halls were chambers reserved for clandestine meetings of the cardinal's infamous network of spies. Some historians argue that these very rooms birthed modern intelligence systems. Courtiers who entered them were often unaware they were being observed, their confessions and alliances recorded. The secrecy of those chambers was such that even centuries later, fragments of parchment and coded notes were found in the sealed walls. One can almost hear the faint scratching of quills, the hush of voices swearing loyalty or betrayal. But not all chambers carried the chill of politics. In Denmark, Kronborg Castle, the very castle immortalized in Shakespeare's Hamlet, contained hidden rooms for far gentler purposes. Chroniclers recorded that beneath its vast banquet hall lay a small chamber with a vaulted ceiling painted with stars. It was here that kings and queens retreated to read letters from distant family, to pray, to weep. Imagine it, a monarch who by day commanded armies, who dined amid pomp and trumpets, descending at night into a quiet, starry vault where they allowed themselves to be merely human. How many tears of loneliness and grief, sealed away for centuries, do those painted stars still witness? Yet the darker side of hidden chambers could never be denied. In Hungary's Buda Castle, tunnels linked the fortress to secret rooms where monarchs and nobles hid treasures during invasions by Ottoman forces. Legends claim that one chamber held not jewels, but prisoners, nobles accused of treason who could not be executed publicly without sparking rebellion. These men were confined in silence, their deaths left unrecorded, their names erased. Archaeologists unearthed shackles and bones in forgotten vaults, lending dreadful weight to the whispers. In Spain's Royal Alcazar of Madrid, a different kind of chamber haunted the halls. Here, secret rooms were rumored to serve as vaults of obsession. King Philip IV, a man consumed by art, is said to have hidden paintings deemed too scandalous for public eyes. Nudes by Titian, works whispered to border on blasphemy, stored not in galleries, but in locked rooms where only the king and his most trusted confidants could enter. For centuries, these paintings were spoken of as legends, until rediscovered long after the king's death. What does it say of rulers that their hidden chambers were not only for war and fear, but for forbidden beauty? And then, there is the tale of Sweden's Gripsholm Castle. Built beside a lake, the castle contained a network of hidden passages used during the reign of Gustav Vasa. Yet among them was one chamber so small and airless it was known as the Whispering Cell. It is said Gustav himself used it to interrogate his enemies face to face. The acoustics were cruel, every sound magnified, every breath a confession. Some prisoners broke within hours, their secrets spilling into the cold air, unable to endure the chamber's oppressive silence. To this day, guides claim visitors can hear their own whispers, chasing them around the curved stone walls. Listener, do you begin to see the pattern? Across Europe, from Paris to Prague, from Madrid to Moscow, the secret chambers tell the same story in different tongues. Rulers cloaked in glory, yet enslaved by fear, indulging desires they could never admit in daylight, hiding truths too dangerous to speak aloud. These rooms are like shadows stitched into stone, shadows that move even when the candlelight dies. And as we wander deeper into this labyrinth of hidden history, the question grows sharper. How much of what we call history was staged in public, and how much was written in the secrecy of these forbidden rooms? Imagine, dear listener, the chill of candlelight flickering against stone, shadows stretching long in a chamber that few alive even knew existed. A monarch sits alone, quill in hand, scratching words upon parchment destined never to be read by the masses. Outside, the palace is alive with music, with courtiers laughing and dancing. But here the silence is suffocating. For this was the true theater of history, the hidden chambers. Let us turn to Germany's Wartburg Castle, a fortress that cradled more than knights and banners. In the 16th century, it hid a chamber that sheltered one of the most dangerous men in Christendom, Martin Luther. After defying the Holy Roman Emperor and the Catholic Church, Luther vanished from public sight. To the world, he had disappeared. Some believed him dead. Yet in truth, he lived in secrecy in a disguised room at Wartburg. Dressed as a knight, he worked feverishly at a desk, hidden from all but a handful of protectors. There, he translated the New Testament into German, shaping the course of history. Think of it, a single secret chamber birthing a revolution that would fracture Europe and ignite centuries of conflict. In France, centuries later, the Louvre, today a museum of treasures, was once itself a royal palace filled with hidden passageways. Beneath its sprawling courtyards lay chambers where the Valois kings stored their most private correspondence. Some believe Catherine de' Medici, famed for her cunning, used these rooms to plot the fates of rival nobles. Her astrologers, too, were said to visit, casting horoscopes in the dim glow of oil lamps, their whispers guiding the queen's political maneuvers. Imagine nobles feasting in glittering halls above, unaware that beneath their feet, their lives were being charted by stars and secrets. And what of Russia? In the Winter Palace of St. Petersburg, secret rooms served more than defense. The Romanovs were a dynasty of paranoia, surrounded by both grandeur and treachery. Nicholas I, in particular, maintained chambers accessible only by hidden staircases from his private study. These were filled not with treasures or lovers, but with surveillance reports. Here, the Tsar read the intercepted letters of his own nobles, documents stolen by his secret police. In these rooms, trust was dissected line by line, loyalty measured in ink. It was not only a chamber of secrecy, but of suspicion, where power meant knowing every word uttered behind closed doors. Nor were the hidden chambers always beneath floors or behind panels. Sometimes they floated above, unseen. In the Doge's Palace of Venice, high above the public halls, there were secret rooms where the infamous Council of Ten convened. Behind locked doors, In chambers soundproofed by layers of wood and plaster, they decided who in the Republic would rise and who would vanish into its prisons. Below, citizens saw the splendor of Venice, gilded ceilings, painted walls. Above, in silence, invisible men held the strings of power. Such was the genius of secrecy, history written in places that never appeared on maps. Even the more romantic courts were not immune. In Vienna, whispers still cling to Schönbrunn Palace of a chamber where Emperor Franz Joseph met with a woman history called the Unknown Countess. Some historians dismiss her as legend, others argue she was real, her influence hidden precisely because she occupied those secret walls. Was she a mistress? A confidant? Perhaps even a spy? Whatever the truth, the chamber reminds us of the delicate line between love and politics, a line often crossed in secrecy. Yet no chamber was perhaps so strange as those of Portugal's Sintra palaces. Beneath the Pina Palace, labyrinthine tunnels led to rooms carved deep into rock, their walls painted with symbols of the Knights Templar. Was it mere decoration? Or did the Portuguese kings preserve a link to that mysterious brotherhood? In those hidden spaces, monarchs held private masses by torchlight, their prayers echoing in chambers that blurred the line between faith and secrecy. Listener, as you trace these stories, do you feel the weight of the unseen? Wars may be fought on battlefields, treaties signed in glittering halls, but the hidden chambers remind us, true history is whispered, not shouted. Behind each stone wall lies another layer of truth, another secret shaping the destiny of nations, and we are only beginning to unlock the doors. Imagine, dear listener, that you are walking through a palace whose corridors are familiar to every visitor. The grand staircases, the galleries adorned with portraits, the endless rows of chandeliers. Yet the true test of perception lies not in what is seen, but in what is missed. For every gilded door opened to the public, there exists another sealed tight, a panel disguised as decoration, a staircase curling downward into silence. And it is in these forgotten places, unseen by common eyes, that rulers revealed their truest selves. Let us journey to the Château de Chambord in France, a Renaissance marvel commissioned by Francis I. Known for its double helix staircase designed by Leonardo da Vinci himself, Chambord is a wonder of engineering and artistry. But what many do not know is that concealed behind its ornate walls were private apartments, rooms so carefully hidden that visiting ambassadors never realized they existed. Francis I, obsessed with maintaining an image of divine authority, would vanish from banquets and appear hours later, refreshed and composed. How? By retreating into these hidden spaces, away from prying eyes, where he could rest, strategize, and, as some whisper, meet with lovers. The illusion of tireless majesty was crafted not only by willpower, but by stone. Crossing into England once more, we find Hampton Court still alive with echoes of the Tudors. Beneath its labyrinthine kitchens and great halls ran a network of passages leading to chambers reserved for the king's most private councils. It was here that Henry VIII is said to have received reports on Anne Boleyn's alleged treason. Accusations whispered in stone, sealed away from the courtly theatrics above. The irony, listener, is sharp. The most public execution of a queen in English history may have been decided in a room no subject ever saw. Elsewhere in Europe, hidden chambers took on a more mystical guise. In Prague's old royal palace, beneath the Vladislav Hall, lies a chamber steeped in legend. Some say it was the site of secret alchemical experiments during the reign of Rudolf II, the Habsburg emperor who collected astrologers, magicians, and seekers of forbidden knowledge. Within those walls, Mercury was heated, strange powders burned, and whispers of immortality filled the smoky air. Did Rudolf truly hope to transmute lead into gold, or was it power itself he sought to transform? Perhaps both, for what is monarchy if not the alchemy of flesh into something divine? In Spain, at the Alcazar of Toledo, the chambers carried a darker burden. Beneath the fortress palace lay cells unmarked on any plan. Unlike common dungeons, these were accessible only through concealed passages from the royal apartments. Prisoners taken there were not rebels or thieves, but nobles whose loyalty had soured. They were too powerful to execute publicly, too dangerous to release. In those chambers they withered in silence, their very existence erased from record. Listener, consider the cruelty of such power. A king not only ruling over life and death, but over memory itself. Portugal's Mafra Palace offers another haunting example. Built by King João V, its scale rivaled that of the Escorial in Spain. Among its many hidden chambers was one designed as an observatory. Here, cloaked in secrecy, the king and his private astronomers gazed at the stars, recording patterns forbidden by the Inquisition. To admit such pursuits openly would risk accusations of heresy, yet within these walls, the monarch sought knowledge beyond dogma. Thus even kings, who demanded obedience from all, bent quietly before the mysteries of the heavens, hiding their curiosity like a sin. And what of France in the Age of Revolution? When the Bastille fell in 1789, among the rubble were discovered sealed chambers, some containing skeletons chained to walls. Paris erupted with fury at the sight. The very existence of such places confirmed the darkest suspicions of tyranny, that men and women had been swallowed by stone, forgotten by design. Yet even as the revolutionaries swore to end such secrecy, new rulers, Napoleon among them, constructed their own hidden chambers. For power, it seems, cannot resist the allure of silence. Listener, these stories show us something profound, that monarchs, despite their crowns and pomp, feared exposure above all. They feared the judgment of subjects, the betrayal of courtiers, the unpredictability of fate, and so they built chambers not only of stone, but of secrecy. Behind those walls, they conspired, wept, sinned, and dreamed. Behind those walls, history was shaped in whispers. But if walls could speak, what more would they reveal? Now, dear listener, let us step into one of the most unsettling truths about these secret chambers. They were not always built to protect the rulers themselves, but sometimes to preserve the monarchy's greatest illusions. For in the grand theater of kingship, appearances were everything. Monarchs were expected to be tireless, wise, and unshaken by human frailty. And yet, like all mortals, they tired, they wept, they raged, and they sinned. Where could such humanity exist but in the hidden places? Consider the Palace of Fontainebleau in France, beloved by the Valois and Bourbon kings. Behind its elegant galleries lay a chamber with no windows, accessible only through a narrow passage from the king's private apartments. There, monarchs would retire to endure sickness or melancholy, away from the eyes of courtiers. To reveal weakness publicly would endanger the perception of divine authority. So the chamber became a place where kings could suffer in silence. In its gloom, France's mightiest rulers coughed blood into linen, prayed feverishly for heirs, or raged against ailments they dared not reveal. How many decisions of war or peace were colored by pain, endured in such shadows, hidden from the world? In England, Whitehall Palace, the beating heart of Tudor and Stuart power, was likewise riddled with secret rooms. One chamber, known only to the Privy Council, was rumored to hold a black cabinet where intercepted letters were opened, read, and resealed before their recipients ever laid hands on them. Here, in candlelit silence, spy masters dictated the fates of men and women who believed themselves safe. Secrets traveled faster than armies, and it was in this chamber that monarchs gained their greatest weapon, knowledge. In Italy, the Palazzo Ducale of Urbino preserved another kind of secrecy. Its duke, Federico da Montefeltro, famed for his intellect and cunning, commissioned a studiolo, an intimate chamber disguised as a simple wooden room. Yet behind its carved panels and inlaid woodwork lay hidden drawers and compartments where manuscripts, maps, and coded correspondence were stored. To an untrained eye, the chamber was nothing more than a retreat for study. But in truth, it was a vault of secrets, knowledge that allowed the Duke to manipulate alliances across the Italian states. It reminds us, listener, that sometimes the sharpest sword of a ruler was not steel, but information guarded in silence. And then there were chambers of indulgence, where the mask of virtue could be cast aside. In Austria's Hofburg Palace, hidden apartments were said to host masked balls, events so clandestine that no official records survive. Behind closed doors, emperors and empresses mingled not as rulers, but as men and women reveling in forbidden pleasures. Courtiers whispered of affairs born in those chambers, of scandals erased before dawn. To maintain the facade of piety in public, rulers needed places where desire could burn unseen. And so the hidden chamber became not only a sanctuary of survival, but of sin. Yet sometimes, these secret places became tombs of irony. In the Tuileries Palace in Paris, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette relied on hidden staircases and passages when revolution erupted in 1789. They attempted escape through a secret route, but their plan failed. The very chambers that had once sheltered royal intrigues now betrayed them, as angry crowds stormed through corridors once reserved for kings. It is a haunting truth. Secrecy may protect, but it may also isolate, making rulers blind to the fury outside their walls. The same fate echoed in Russia, when the Romanovs were imprisoned in the Ipatiev house during the Revolution of 1917. Though no secret chambers protected them then, legends arose afterward of hidden rooms beneath the palaces of St. Petersburg, chambers that, had they been used, might have offered escape. Whether true or myth, the stories show how deeply the idea of hidden chambers is woven into our imagination of monarchy. We cannot conceive of kings and queens without secret doors, as though power itself requires a hidden refuge. So, listener, as we walk through these halls of silence, one truth becomes clearer. The hidden chambers of Europe's nobility were not mere curiosities of architecture. They were instruments of survival, of deceit, of desire, and of fear. They remind us that the most gilded crowns rest upon trembling heads, and that the grandest palaces echo with secrets louder than trumpets. But there is still more to reveal, rooms yet unopened, stories yet untold. For even in ruin these chambers whisper. Now, dear listener, imagine the moment when the torchlight flickers low, and a monarch, cloaked in velvet, presses their hand against a panel that seems nothing more than carved wood. With a quiet click, it swings open, revealing a passage where no servant dares tread. These were the arteries of hidden power, and through them coursed the secrets of Europe. In Spain, let us return to El Escorial, that austere palace monastery built by Philip II. While its public chambers projected devotion and discipline, beneath its stone floors lurked a labyrinth of tunnels and sealed rooms. Chroniclers tell us of a chamber with a single grated opening above the royal chapel. From this hidden perch, Philip himself could observe Mass unseen, studying the priests, the courtiers, the ambassadors below. Some whispered he did this not out of devotion, but paranoia, testing the loyalty of those who knelt, measuring who faltered in prayer. Imagine the unease, to know the king might be watching from invisible eyes above. In such chambers, surveillance was sanctified. In France, the Palais des Papes in Avignon concealed something more chilling. Within its fortified walls, during the 14th century, popes and cardinals used hidden cells to imprison rivals or heretics in silence. Some were starved, others interrogated in darkness. Yet these chambers were also used for secrecy of another kind, negotiations with monarchs that could never be made public. Gold and promises exchanged hands in stone rooms where even scribes were forbidden to enter. Thus, alliances between crowns and the church were sealed not at altars, but in shadow. England, too, cultivated a peculiar use for secret chambers, harboring fugitives of faith. During the Elizabethan persecutions, Catholic priests often hid in priest holes within noble estates. Ingenious builders like Nicholas Owen crafted chambers so cunningly concealed beneath hearths, behind walls, within staircases, that even after days of searching, pursuivants failed to find them. Some of these holes were large enough for a man to crouch with food and water, others barely big enough to breathe. For hours, even days, priests lay in suffocating silence as armed men searched inches away. These were not royal palaces, but noble houses, and yet they show us how deeply Europe's elite understood the value of hidden chambers, whether for power or faith. In Austria, the Belvedere Palace held its own secrets. Prince Eugene of Savoy, the great military commander, was said to have maintained a concealed room filled with maps and letters from his vast network of spies. Here he plotted campaigns that reshaped the balance of Europe from Hungary to Italy. To the public, he was a flamboyant general, a patron of the arts. Yet within that hidden chamber, bent over candlelit maps, he was a strategist of shadows. Without those secret spaces, perhaps Vienna itself would have fallen to Ottoman rule. Not all stories of hidden chambers are tales of tyranny or survival. Some are stories of sheer eccentricity. In Bavaria's Neuschwanstein Castle, built centuries later by King Ludwig II, there exists a hidden chamber designed to resemble a cave, complete with artificial stalactites. Why? Because Ludwig, a dreamer king, sought to escape into fantasy. In this secret grotto, he listened to Wagner's operas in solitude, surrounding himself with an illusion of nature carved in stone. While his ministers despaired at his extravagance, Ludwig retreated into chambers that reflected not power, but longing for beauty, for escape from a world too heavy with duty. And then, perhaps most haunting of all, are the chambers we no longer know. Beneath palaces in Krakow, in Vienna, in Paris, restorers still stumble upon sealed doors bricked centuries ago. Some open into narrow voids, others into rooms with traces of furniture, paintings, even clothing left behind in haste. Why were they sealed? Was it plague, treason, or scandal that demanded their silence? These forgotten chambers are like graves of memory, their stories buried with the stone. Listener, the hidden chambers of Europe remind us that history is layered like the palaces themselves, grand halls above, shadows beneath. The true nature of monarchy was never in the coronations or banquets. It was in these secret places, where rulers were stripped of masks, where humanity and ambition collided in silence. But we are not finished. There are still darker turns in this tale, moments when chambers decided not just the fate of rulers, but the destiny of nations. Picture this, dear listener, a torch sputtering in the damp air, footsteps echoing down a passage no servant was ever meant to walk. At the end of that narrow corridor waits a chamber whose stones have witnessed confessions too heavy for daylight. These are the places where monarchs gambled with destiny, and where the fates of whole nations were sealed with whispers rather than proclamations. Let us cross now to France during the reign of Louis XV. Hidden behind the glittering facade of Versailles, the king maintained the Parc aux Cerfs, a set of secret apartments connected to the palace by concealed routes. Officially, Versailles embodied grandeur and piety. Unofficially, in these chambers, the king kept mistresses hidden from the court's judging eyes. Young women, some scarcely more than girls, were escorted through hidden passages to serve the whims of the crown. Few courtiers dared speak of it aloud, yet everyone knew. These chambers, though concealed in stone, cast shadows that stained the monarchy's reputation, feeding the growing discontent that would later ignite into revolution. The lesson was bitter. Even the most secret rooms can echo outward, their whispers shaping history itself. In England, centuries earlier, hidden chambers played a role in a far graver drama, the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Guy Fawkes and his conspirators sought to blow up Parliament and King James I. Yet long before their infamous plan, noble houses had already hidden Catholic priests in secret priest holes, many of which doubled as chambers for plotting rebellion. In places like Harvington Hall, entire networks of concealed rooms sheltered not only men, but treasonous plans. When Fawkes was captured, the crown ordered searches of noble estates, tearing down paneling, prodding at walls, prying into hearths. The very existence of secret chambers became a mark of suspicion. Thus, architecture itself betrayed allegiance, and silence in stone became a deadly confession. Farther east, in Russia's Kremlin, secret chambers dictated life and death on a scale unmatched. Ivan the Terrible maintained what were known as Orani, private chambers where his oprichniki, his feared secret police, delivered intelligence. Here, in candlelit gloom, Ivan pored over accusations, lists of names, reports of disloyalty. From these chambers, whole families were condemned to exile or execution. The irony was grim. While Moscow glittered with onion domes and divine liturgy, beneath it, decisions of cruelty were carried out in silence, in rooms where only fear spoke. In the palaces of Vienna, the Habsburg dynasty nurtured its own chambers of secrecy. Within the Hofburg, hidden rooms stored genealogical records and love letters too scandalous to see daylight. One tale speaks of Emperor Franz Stephan, who allegedly kept a concealed chamber filled with the personal diaries of his court. Among them were accounts of affairs, betrayals, and confessions written under promise of secrecy. What is more dangerous than gold, listener? Information. And in those sealed diaries lay the power to blackmail nobles for generations. Whether truth or myth, the story reflects how even emperors understood. The most potent treasure in a hidden chamber is knowledge. Not all chambers, however, were prisons of fear or indulgence. Some were vaults of hope. In Poland's Wawel Castle, secret rooms preserved relics of saints and treasures of the crown during wars. These chambers were so carefully hidden that even invading armies failed to uncover them. Thanks to such concealment, symbols of Poland's identity, its coronation sword, its sacred relics, survived centuries of turmoil. Here, secrecy served not lust or tyranny, but the preservation of a nation's spirit. And then there are the chambers that drift into legend. Beneath the castles of Transylvania, rumors speak of hidden rooms used by Vlad the Impaler himself. Some say he retreated into chambers carved deep into rock, where he plotted his wars against Ottoman invaders. Others whisper that prisoners were held there, their blood staining the walls. Whether fact or embellishment, such tales remind us that hidden chambers magnify myth, becoming canvases upon which fear paints freely. Listener, as we move deeper through these labyrinths of secrecy, do you not feel the duality? These rooms were sanctuaries and traps, vaults of love and vaults of horror, places where kings became men and men became shadows. And as centuries rolled on, the chambers themselves seemed to develop a soul, absorbing the whispers, the tears, the laughter, until the very stones seemed alive with memory. But one truth remains: behind every gilded facade, every marble column, every shining crown, there is always a hidden door, and beyond that door lies not splendor, but silence. Imagine, dear listener, the sound of a key turning in a lock that no servant has ever seen, the scrape of stone as a panel shifts to reveal a hidden world. These chambers, though invisible to the public eye, were the very heartbeat of monarchy. Within them, rulers unmasked themselves, empires were shaped, and secrets too perilous for daylight were buried. Let us journey now to the Burg in Vienna, the sprawling imperial complex of the Habsburgs. Here, beneath layers of Baroque grandeur, there existed a chamber known only to a select circle of advisors. It was not adorned with gold or frescoes, but with shelves of coded letters, treaties, and ciphered communications. This was the nerve center of Habsburg intelligence, a place where spies' reports from Istanbul, Paris, and London were opened, decoded, and sealed again for the emperor's eyes alone. In that hidden room, the empire stretched its invisible threads across Europe, tugging at the balance of power with words instead of swords. How many wars were won or averted, not on battlefields, but in this silent chamber, where ink decided what armies later confirmed? In France, centuries earlier, Catherine de' Medici was said to have designed her own secret chambers at the Château de Chenonceau. Behind her opulent apartments lay concealed passageways leading to a private gallery where she could eavesdrop unseen. It was whispered that she used these rooms to monitor her courtiers, to listen for plots, and perhaps even to practice her interest in astrology and the occult. Courtiers spoke of strange odors of burning herbs wafting from the hidden spaces, of hushed voices chanting in the night. Were they rituals, political councils, or both? The truth lies buried in stone, but one thing is clear. Power, for Catherine, was not only a matter of politics, but of mystery. Crossing into England once again, let us pause at Hampton Court. While its public halls displayed Tudor splendor, whispers tell of a secret chamber where Henry VIII retreated during his infamous illnesses. Suffering from leg ulcers and torments of the mind, the king could not afford to show weakness to his courtiers. In that chamber, hidden from the gaze of ambassadors and rivals, physicians tended his wounds while Henry raged against his own failing body. Imagine the fear of those doctors, knowing that if the king's pain turned to anger, their heads might roll. In such rooms, medicine and monarchy collided, with the lives of healers hanging on the balance of a king's temper. In the north, Denmark's Kronborg Castle, the inspiration for Shakespeare's Elsinore, in Hamlet, boasted hidden staircases and secret chambers that allowed sentries and royalty alike to move unseen. One particular chamber, small and windowless, was said to have served as a prison for noblemen who had fallen out of favor. Here, men who once dined at the king's table sat in silence, the stone walls pressing in as they waited to learn whether they would be pardoned or executed. For those nobles, the hidden chamber was not a place of intrigue, but of despair. Even in Italy's Venice, the Doge's palace hid its own sinister rooms. The infamous Pazzi and Piombi, secret prisons beneath the palace and beneath the leaden roof. Nobles accused of treachery or debt were often confined there, away from the public eye. The irony was sharp. The most beautiful palace in Europe, a marvel of Gothic architecture, concealed within it chambers of suffering and shadows. To visitors, Venice was pageantry. To its prisoners, it was a cage of silence. Listener, do you see how the pattern repeats across nations, across centuries? Wherever nobility built their palaces, they built also their secrets. Some chambers protected them from enemies, others from shame, others still from themselves. Yet all shared a common thread: the need to divide the world into what could be seen and what must remain unseen. And as we peel back these layers of history, it becomes clear that these secret chambers were not just physical spaces. They were symbols, manifestations of monarchy's greatest truth: that power thrives in secrecy, and that behind every throne lies a locked door no commoner may ever enter. But what happens when those doors are forced open, when the secrets spill out into the world? That, dear listener, is where history turns dark and where our tale moves next. Think of it, dear listener. For centuries, these chambers held their silence, their doors sealed against prying eyes. But history, relentless and unmerciful, has a way of forcing locks. When secret chambers are revealed, they do not simply disclose stone and dust. They unveil truths capable of shaking empires. Let us return to France, to Versailles during the Revolution. When the crowds stormed the palace, many expected to find only opulence: gold, marble, silk. Yet as the mob ransacked halls, they stumbled upon concealed doors leading to passageways used by the royal family to flee their chambers in moments of peril. Behind some panels, they found rooms with caches of correspondence, letters between Marie Antoinette and her brother, the Emperor of Austria, pleading for intervention. These documents, once hidden in royal chambers, were seized and used against the Queen in her trial, painted as evidence of treason. A chamber that once protected became the chamber that condemned. In England, too, time unveiled secrets. Centuries after Elizabeth I's reign, restorers uncovered long-lost priest holes in noble estates, some still containing fragments of rosaries, prayer books, or simple wooden stools. These chambers, built in desperation, told a story England tried to erase: the persistence of forbidden faith. For modern eyes, they were not simply voids in stone, but testimonies to courage, suffering, and the fear that haunted an entire generation. In silence, the walls had preserved truths more eloquent than words. Germany holds another unsettling tale. Beneath Heidelberg Castle, during renovations in the 19th century, workers discovered a sealed chamber containing skeletons shackled to the wall. No records explained their presence. Were they prisoners forgotten in the chaos of war, or victims of some private vendetta buried away from history's gaze? The discovery chilled the scholars of the time, for it proved that noble chambers could conceal not only secrets of politics or lust, but crimes erased by silence. To this day, the chamber's story remains unsolved, a scar carved in stone. In Russia, after the fall of the Romanovs, secret chambers beneath the Winter Palace were uncovered, revealing stores of jewels, weapons, and correspondence hidden during the chaos of revolution. Among these were letters between Nicholas II and foreign rulers, desperate pleas for support, written even as the empire crumbled. These chambers, once meant as vaults of survival, became tombs of lost hope. Their contents now sit in museums, stripped of secrecy. their exposure a final humiliation to a dynasty that had ruled for 3 centuries. Even in Spain, El Escorial has yielded its whispers. Archaeologists exploring its hidden chambers have found oddities: unfinished staircases that lead nowhere, bricked-off passages without explanation, and sealed doors never meant to be reopened. Each discovery raises more questions than answers. Were they abandoned designs, or deliberate constructions meant to confuse intruders? Or were they, as some whisper, chambers meant to house secrets too terrible for daylight? What fascinates us, listener, is not only the chambers themselves, but what happens when secrecy is pierced. For centuries, nobles and monarchs built these rooms believing stone and silence would protect their secrets forever. But time is the greatest thief. Eventually, the doors crack, the walls collapse, the earth gives up its silence. And when it does, the revelations transform history. Kings appear not as divine figures, but as frightened men. Queens not as untouchable icons, but as women of desire and desperation. Dynasties not as eternal, but as fragile illusions. The chambers tell us that history has 2 faces. One is the face we see in ceremonies, portraits, and chronicles. The other is the hidden face, the tears, betrayals, and fears whispered in locked rooms. And perhaps it is this second face, the one behind the doors, that reveals the truest history of all. But still, our journey does not end here. There are stories of chambers so shrouded in legend that even now, no key has been found to unlock them. Tales of treasure, curses, and secrets buried so deep, they live more in myth than in memory. And it is there, in the blurred space between truth and legend, that our path leads next. And now, dear listener, we step into the realm where history and legend entwine, where hidden chambers cease to be mere architecture and become vessels of myth. For though stone crumbles and dynasties fall, the whispers about what lies behind sealed doors endure like ghosts. Take, for instance, the Château de Chambord in France. This sprawling Renaissance wonder, commissioned by Francis I, is said to contain secret rooms designed by none other than Leonardo da Vinci himself. Among the palace's grand staircases and gilded chambers lies a labyrinth of hidden passages. Some lead to small, forgotten rooms, but one in particular, sealed for centuries, was rumored to contain designs and inventions the great artist never revealed to the world. No explorer has ever found such a chamber, yet the legend persists, woven into the very stones of Chambord. Whether true or not, the idea that Da Vinci's genius might slumber behind a panel in a French palace keeps scholars and dreamers alike restless. In Scotland, the tale grows darker. Beneath Edinburgh Castle, secret chambers were rumored to stretch into the earth, connecting the fortress to the city below. In the 18th century, a boy was sent with a drum to explore these tunnels, beating his instrument as he went so that those above could follow his progress. But midway, the drumming stopped. The boy never returned, and the tunnels were sealed. To this day, locals claim they hear faint drumming beneath the streets of Edinburgh. Whether it was a cave-in, foul play, or something more sinister, the legend endures as one of Scotland's most haunting secrets. In Bohemia, whispers surround Prague Castle. It is said that deep within its foundations lies a hidden chamber containing the Devil's Bible, a manuscript so vast and so mysterious that some believed it was written in a single night with the devil's aid. The Codex Gigas, as it is known, survives today in Sweden, but legends insist that the original, or perhaps a darker copy, remains locked in a secret vault beneath the castle. Priests warned that opening the chamber would unleash curses upon the city, and so it remains untouched, a secret entombed in stone. And then there is perhaps the most tantalizing legend of all, the hidden chambers of the Vatican. Beneath St. Peter's Basilica and within the Apostolic Palace, countless rooms lie sealed, some accessible only to the Pope and his closest advisors. Tales tell of secret archives holding forbidden texts, gospels that contradict Scripture, prophecies too dangerous to reveal, accounts of royal scandals long buried. While scholars are permitted glimpses of the Vatican's secret archives, much remains sealed away, guarded as fiercely as any crown jewel. What truths lie hidden there? The sins of kings, the bargains of popes, or perhaps histories so disruptive they would shake the foundations of faith itself? In Austria, legends swirl around the Schatzkammer, the imperial treasury of Vienna. Beyond the jewels and regalia on display, whispers persist of sealed chambers beneath, where relics of unimaginable power are kept. The spear of destiny, said to have pierced Christ's side, along with objects of occult significance collected by emperors obsessed with prophecy and fate. Whether relics or mere myths, the belief in their existence made rulers act as if destiny itself could be stored in stone vaults. Even in Spain, El Escorial holds its legends. Some believe there exists a hidden chamber, locked since Philip II's death, where the king's private confessions, written by his own hand, were placed. If such writings exist, they could reveal not only his deepest sins, but his true motivations in forging Spain's empire. No key has ever been found, and no monarch has dared order the chamber opened, as if the very act might disturb the restless spirit of the king. Listener, do you feel it? These legends may be truth, or they may be tales spun by centuries of imagination, but they share a common thread: humanity's need to believe that behind the walls of power lies a deeper mystery, a hidden truth waiting to be unveiled. For we suspect that no crown, no throne, no empire can exist without secrets carved into its very foundations. And so, our journey nears its end. Yet before we part, there remains one final chamber to enter, the metaphorical one, the chamber of meaning, where we ask, what do these hidden rooms truly reveal about nobility, royalty, and the human heart itself? And so, dear listener, we step now into that final chamber, not of stone or marble, but of meaning. After walking through corridors of intrigue, vaults of fear, and hidden rooms of desire, one must ask, what do these secret chambers truly tell us about the nobility and royalty who built them? First, they remind us of fragility. Monarchs and nobles may have worn crowns of gold, but behind the facade of majesty, they were vulnerable, haunted by sickness, hunted by rivals, terrified of betrayal. The hidden rooms were their refuge from the crushing weight of expectation. Kings raged in secret against failing bodies. Queens wept unseen for lost children, and heirs were smuggled through hidden staircases when mobs came roaring at the gates. Behind the masks of grandeur lay fragile human beings, clinging to walls that promised safety, but often delivered only delay. Second, the chambers reveal obsession with control. A throne could not stand on strength alone. It required the careful weaving of perception, of watching and knowing more than others suspected. Thus, monarchs built secret listening rooms, surveillance chambers, and vaults of intelligence where ink was sharper than steel. These were not merely architectural curiosities. They were weapons of power, sharpened by secrecy. To control a chamber was to control information, and to control information was to rule. Third, they expose hypocrisy. Monarchs preached piety while indulging lust in hidden apartments, They extolled justice while imprisoning rivals in windowless vaults. The grandeur of courts often depended upon a careful separation between the visible and the concealed. The banquet halls glittered, while the hidden rooms groaned with secrets too scandalous for public eyes. In this way, the chambers are metaphors for monarchy itself, splendid on the surface, compromised in the shadows. Fourth, and perhaps most poignantly, they embody memory. When uncovered centuries later, the chambers spoke louder than chronicles. A forgotten rosary in a priest hole tells of faith pursued at the risk of death. A sealed letter in a Versailles chamber reveals desperation behind a queen's smile. A skeleton in a bricked-up vault testifies to cruelty denied by official histories. The walls preserved what words tried to bury, and so the chambers became historians themselves, silent, impartial, unflinching. And lastly, listener, these chambers remind us of ourselves. For who among us does not carry hidden rooms within? Spaces of memory, of regret, of secret longing. Just as palaces had their concealed corridors, so too do human hearts. Perhaps this is why the legends endure, because we sense in them a mirror of our own hidden lives. So the next time you walk through an old castle, a ruined fortress, or a palace now turned to museum, pause and look closer. That panel of wood, that narrow stair, that bricked archway, it may hide more than stone. It may hide the laughter of kings, the tears of queens, the whispers of conspirators, or the breath of those who waited for rescue that never came. The chambers are gone to us, but their secrets still breathe in the cracks of history. And as our story closes, remember this: crowns and thrones may dazzle, but true power has always belonged to silence, to secrets, to the locked door no commoner may ever open. This has been The Secret Chambers, hidden rooms that only royalty knows about, told to you by History One. If you wish to journey back into the shadows of history, where truth hides in stone and whispers never die, be sure to return, to subscribe, and to step with us once more into the mysteries of the past.